Welcome back to The Explainer. So, look, we all know Westeros, right? You know, the Iron Throne, the dragons, the towering ice of the wall, all those massive wars. And you probably know a good bit about Essos, too, that massive continent to the east where Daenerys built up her armies. But today, we are going to completely shatter your understanding of this universe. We're zooming way past the edges of the known map to look at two forgotten, absolutely forbidden continents at the very bottom of the world, Sothoryos and Ulthos. And let me tell you, both of these places are hiding secrets so disturbing and so genuinely world-changing that they could completely rewrite everything we thought we knew about the Long Night.
Okay, let's dive into this by thinking about our own world for a second. In real-world history, medieval cartographers used to write "Here be dragons" right on the edges of their maps. It was basically their way of saying, look, we have absolutely no idea what's out there, and frankly, we're terrified to find out. Well, in this fictional universe, the maesters of the Citadel operate on that exact same logic. Despite literally centuries of compiling knowledge, their absolute, paralyzing terror of the Deep South has left massive portions of their own planet completely unmapped.
When we really pull the lens back, like way back, Westeros is practically microscopic compared to the vast, dark unknowns of Sothoryos and Ulthos. I mean, the known world is safe, it's charted, and its history is generally understood. But the unknown world, it's completely uncharted, it is actively hostile, and it's hiding ancient, world-ending secrets. Rumor has it that no ship that sails too far south or east ever actually returns. So you gotta wonder, what exactly is out there keeping people away?
All right, Section 1, Sothoryos, the Cursed Continent. To really understand the true terror looming over the known world, we have to start our investigation right here.
Think about this. Even the mighty Valyrian dragon lords, literally the most advanced, powerful civilization in history, tried to conquer and settle Sothoryos. They had actual dragons, and they failed every single time. Why? Because Sothoryos actively rebels against human settlement. It's like the land itself hates you. We're talking swarms of flesh-eating insects that can strip a man to the bone, hyper-aggressive armored reptiles the size of small horses, completely unidentifiable ancient ruins buried deep under the jungle canopy, and honestly, worst of all, the diseases.
The absolute deadliest of these is called the wasting plague. It's this highly aggressive, just horrifying disease that causes the victim's body and mind to rapidly deteriorate from the inside out. In fact, this specific plague completely wiped out the longest-lasting Valyrian penal colony in Sothoryos, a brutal city called Gagossos. It killed everyone, turning the place into what terrified sailors now call the Isle of Tears.
But guys, the jungle isn't just full of nightmare diseases and giant reptiles. There are also the brindled men. These are massive, highly territorial beings with mottled, sort of scale-like skin. And they aren't just animals. They use tools, they speak an entirely unidentifiable language, and they show clear signs of organized intelligence. The maesters simply cannot categorize them. They're a really disturbing anomaly, and as you'll see in a bit, they might actually be the surviving remnants of something much older.
Let's move to Section 2, the Black Stone Enigma, and its impossible architecture, and see how this builds into something even crazier.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when we pivot from biological horrors to downright architectural impossibility. We find a phenomenon that literally links the most dangerous places on the planet. Down in Sothoryos, we have the abandoned city of Yin, which is built entirely out of this oily, warm black stone that is somehow impossible to cut or damage. But here's the kicker. That exact same uncarvable black stone is found globally. It makes up the shadow-infused city of Asshai, way in the east, the Sea Stone Chair over in the Iron Islands, which actually predates the First Men, and the massive 5 forts over in Yiti. It's like a giant puzzle.
But Yin is just on another level of terrifying. Built entirely of this warm, greasy black stone we just talked about, it's a city scaled to hold millions of people. Yet the entire population of Yin simply vanished, gone. There were no bodies ever found, no signs of a struggle or violence, no plague pits, just empty ruins. Even the impossibly dense, hyper-hostile jungle completely avoids touching the black stone. And any explorer brave enough to camp there reports this overwhelming, inescapable feeling of being watched.
Which naturally leads us to Section 3, Ulthos and the Shadowlands, the Darkest Edge.
If we shift our focus far southeast to the completely undocumented continent of Ulthos, its proximity to Asshai becomes the ultimate key to this whole mystery. When you put Yin and Asshai side by side, the comparison is just staggering. Yin is buried deep in Sothoryos, completely abandoned, surrounded by a dead perimeter of jungle.
Asshai sits right at the edge of the Shadowlands, built of the exact same impossible black stone with these terrifyingly massive, wrong-feeling proportions. It's populated, sure, but it's completely sterile. There are no children, no animals, just a poisoned black river flowing through it. This strongly suggests these weren't isolated settlements. They were built by the same massive, hemisphere-spanning ancient civilization.
So the crucial point is what the ancient texts quietly mention about this area. They say that the walls between the living world and something else are thinner in the Shadowlands behind Asshai than anywhere else in the world. I want you to really think about that for a second. Thinner than the haunted forest, thinner than the lands north of the wall. This deep southern region holds a much deeper, far more ancient magical danger than absolutely anything Jon Snow ever faced out in the snow.
All of this hidden, overwhelmingly dark southern magic really forces us to stop and ask one world-shattering question. Where did the Long Night actually begin? I mean, for the entire story we've been told to look north, right? We're told the Great Winter and the White Walkers marched down from the land of always winter. But what if that is only half the truth?
Let's explore that in Section 4, A Global Long Night, the True Threat.
This brings us to a grand unifying theory that completely flips the script. What if the Long Night was actually a catastrophic worldwide event that squeezed the planet from both poles simultaneously? Let's put this timeline into a conversational perspective. Way back, like more than 12,000 years ago, long before recorded history, these Blackstone megacities were already being constructed in the Deep South. Around 10,000 years ago, boom, the Long Night strikes globally. Fast forward to just 400 years ago, and the most advanced society ever, the Valyrians, utterly failed to colonize Sothoryos. And today, the ruins of Yin are still completely empty and unnervingly warm. The sheer scale of ancient prehistoric power at play here makes modern Valyria look incredibly weak by comparison.
And honestly, the breadcrumbs proving this southern origin are literally everywhere in the source material. First, you've got the myths of the Bloodstone Emperor over in Yiti, who supposedly worshipped a dark stone that fell from the sky, which triggered the Long Night. Second, the Shadowbinders of Asshai manipulate literal, tangible darkness. And third, this is huge, the massive Blackstone 5 forts weren't built to block threats coming from the north or the east. No, they specifically face south and east, specifically designed to block out some ancient horror coming from the direction of Ulthos and Sothoryos. Which takes us to our final section, Section 5, The True Final War, A Cosmic Terror. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this southern origin escalates the stakes from a standard zombie survival story to straight-up existential cosmic terror. Just look at the stark contrast between our two greatest threats. We obsess over the White Walkers, but really, they're just instruments. They're localized weapons of ice pushing from the north. But the religion of the Lord of Light warns of something worse, the Great Other, the ultimate faceless, godlike force of shadow and death. And where does shadow magic actually originate and thrive? Asshai, the Deep South. The White Walkers are just the physical threat. The Great Other is the actual cosmic, shadow-based horror pulling the strings, and it's deeply connected to the bottom edges of our map. Suddenly, this paints the mysteries of Sothoryos in a really tragic new light. Actually, scratch that. It's not just tragic, it's horrifying. Remember the brindled men we talked about earlier? Are they really just natural monsters? Or are they the transformed, corrupted descendants of the millions of people who once inhabited those massive black stone cities? It's highly likely that the horrifying diseases, the hyper-hostile jungle, and the brindled men themselves are just the tragic aftermath of humanity's prolonged, doomed contact with the Great Other's southern magic. So if you take nothing else away from this explainer today, please remember this. The War at the Wall, it's only one front of a massive, ancient conflict that literally spans the entire globe. It is a planetary pincer movement. The forces of ice push down from the north, while the far older, ancient forces of shadow and death push up from the unmapped south. This isn't just a political squabble, it's a global reckoning with forces from prehistory. And that brings us to our core, powerful thesis for the day. We are living in a world where Westeros is the map, but the truth is at the edges. George R.R. Martin doesn't just leave blank spaces on a map out of lazy world building, it's absolutely crucial. Those blank spaces are the ultimate tool for suspense. The real history of this world, the raw magic, the true origin of the Long Night, the existential threats, it all happened, and honestly, is still happening, at the far edges where no one dares to sail. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly unsettling thought to carry with you.
We know all about the White Walkers marching south from the frozen north. That's a given. But when the long night truly returns to blanket the entire globe in darkness, what ancient, unfathomable horror is going to wake up and rise from those empty, warm ruins in Sothoryos and Ulthos?